Have you noticed how life in the US feels harder every single year? Millions of families are discovering that the basics, a safe home, affordable food, reliable healthcare are slipping out of reach. Behind the headlines are struggles that hit close to home. Overwhelming debt, relentless inflation, and communities torn apart by climate disasters. These are not distant problems. They are challenges reshaping daily life for ordinary people right now. In this video, we'll uncover the 10 urgent reasons why survival in America feels increasingly impossible, and why understanding them is the first step to facing the crisis head-on. Number 10. Government debt and policy uncertainty. The growing weight of government debt and constant policy uncertainty has created an atmosphere of instability that touches every American household. With national debt surpassing unprecedented levels, concerns about future tax hikes and spending cuts loom over families already struggling to make ends meet. Each new debate in Washington over budgets, shutdowns, or debt ceilings brings the threat of disrupted services, furloughed workers, and delayed benefits. For ordinary citizens, these battles translate into real fears about whether their retirement savings, healthcare programs, or social support will remain secure. The uncertainty surrounding policy decisions makes it nearly impossible for families to plan for the future with confidence. This turbulence also affects essential services. Cuts to programs like Medicaid, food assistance, and education funding leave vulnerable populations at greater risk. Meanwhile, taxpayers shoulder a growing burden as interest payments on the debt consume more of the federal budget, leaving fewer resources for infrastructure, disaster relief, or innovation. Businesses, too, are hesitant to invest or expand in such an unpredictable climate, slowing economic growth and limiting opportunities for job creation. The instability created by shifting policies doesn't just harm the economy, it undermines trust in the very institutions meant to provide stability and protection. The personal consequences of this uncertainty are profound. Families delay buying homes, starting businesses, or even having children because they cannot count on stable economic conditions. Seniors worry about the future of Social Security, while younger generations question whether they will ever see the benefits of the taxes they are paying today. This persistent sense of vulnerability feeds a broader mood of frustration and despair across the nation. For millions, the combination of rising debt and policy unpredictability makes life in the U.S. feel increasingly unlivable, as the very systems meant to safeguard well-being instead deepen instability and anxiety. Number 9. Mental health crisis. The United States is facing a profound mental health crisis that touches nearly every community. Rates of depression, anxiety, and burnout have climbed to historic highs, leaving millions struggling just to get through each day. Economic pressures, social isolation, and uncertainty about the future create a relentless backdrop of stress. For many, the cost of therapy or counseling is far out of reach, while long waiting lists make professional care inaccessible even when people are desperate for help. This shortage of support systems leaves individuals battling in silence, amplifying feelings of hopelessness and despair. The crisis is particularly severe among young people. Studies show record levels of teen anxiety, self-harm, and suicidal thoughts, fueled by academic pressure, unstable home environments, and the constant comparisons magnified by social media. Workers in demanding fields also face relentless burnout, with many leaving their jobs due to unmanageable stress. The stigma around seeking help remains another barrier, as cultural expectations often discourage people from admitting vulnerability. Without intervention, millions are left untreated, their suffering hidden until it erupts into deeper problems that affect families, workplaces, and entire communities. The ripple effects of poor mental health stretch into every corner of society. Relationships break under the weight of constant emotional strain, parents struggle to support their children, and workplaces lose productivity as employees burn out. Hospitals already strained by physical health demands now face growing pressure from psychiatric crises, with emergency rooms often becoming the only option for people in severe distress. The absence of affordable, accessible mental health care underscores the reality that survival in the U.S. is no longer just about meeting physical needs, it's about enduring emotional ones as well. For millions, this unaddressed mental health crisis makes daily life feel unbearable, deepening the sense that the nation itself has become unlivable. Number 8. Crime and safety concerns. For millions of Americans, the fear of crime and declining public safety adds another layer of stress to an already difficult existence. In many cities, rising rates of violent incidents and property theft have left residents feeling constantly on edge. Even in suburban and rural areas, once considered safe havens, communities report growing concerns about break-ins, drug-related activity, and violent disputes. When families can no longer rely on the sense of security that their neighborhoods once offered, the very fabric of daily life begins to fray. The perception and reality of danger makes even routine tasks like commuting or letting children play outside feel fraught with risk. Economic pressures play a major role in this surge. Widening inequality, lack of affordable housing, and limited job opportunities push some individuals into desperate situations that fuel criminal activity. Police departments, stretched thin by staffing shortages, struggle to respond quickly, further eroding public trust. At the same time, debates around law enforcement reform and community policing strategies highlight deep divisions about how to restore safety without exacerbating systemic injustices. For ordinary families, the uncertainty about whether help will arrive in time or whether the justice system will protect them creates a constant undercurrent of fear. The toll of these safety concerns extends beyond immediate threats. Residents living under the shadow of rising crime often experience heightened stress, disrupted sleep, and long-term mental health struggles. Businesses close early or relocate, draining neighborhoods of resources and opportunities, while homeowners see property values decline. Parents are left grappling with how to shield their children from both physical danger and the psychological burden of growing up in unsafe environments. For many, the erosion of trust in their surroundings feels like yet another sign that life in the U.S. is becoming unlovable, as even the promise of basic security slips through their fingers. Number 7. Healthcare worker and teacher shortages. Across the nation, a growing shortage of healthcare workers and teachers is eroding the very foundations of daily life. Hospitals and clinics are struggling to fill critical positions, leaving patients waiting longer for essential care. Schools face similar challenges, with classrooms overcrowded and educators stretched far beyond their limits. These shortages are not just inconveniences. They represent systemic cracks in two of society's most vital institutions. When access to doctors, nurses, and teachers becomes unreliable, the sense of stability families depend on begins to unravel. The reasons behind these shortages are multifaceted. Many professionals are leaving due to burnout, low pay, and overwhelming workloads, problems that were amplified during the pandemic but persist years later. Younger workers are hesitant to enter fields where the rewards no longer match the sacrifice. In rural communities, the absence of local hospitals or qualified teachers leaves families without even the most basic services, forcing long commutes or inadequate alternatives. These gaps widen existing inequalities, ensuring that wealthier areas continue to thrive while lower-income neighborhoods fall further behind. The result is a patchwork of care and education that leaves millions underserved. The consequences are deeply personal. Patients face delayed diagnoses and treatments, sometimes with life-threatening results. Parents worry about the quality of education their children receive when teachers are forced to juggle oversized classrooms or leave positions unfilled entirely. For many families, the lack of reliable care and education reinforces a sense of abandonment, as if the systems designed to protect them are crumbling. Experts warn that without significant investment and reform, shortages in these critical sectors will only intensify, deepening the divide between those who can afford private solutions and those left behind. This widening gap makes survival in the U.S. feel increasingly unlivable, as two cornerstones of community life, healthcare and education, slip further out of reach. Number 6. Rising homelessness. The surge in homelessness across the United States has become one of the clearest signs that survival is slipping out of reach for millions. In major cities, sidewalks and parks are lined with tent encampments, while shelters struggle to keep up with growing demand. Rising housing costs, stagnant wages, and the lingering effects of economic downturns have forced many working families into the streets. What was once seen as an issue affecting only the most vulnerable has now become a crisis that touches teachers, service workers, and even professionals unable to keep up with skyrocketing rent. The causes are complex, but deeply interconnected. A shortage of affordable housing, coupled with inadequate mental health services and substance abuse treatment, has left countless people without stable shelter. Meanwhile, government programs designed to provide relief are often underfunded, leaving families waiting months or years for assistance that may never come. For farmers, the heartbreak is especially severe, as children are increasingly represented among the homeless population. Schools struggle to support these students, who face constant disruption and lack the stability needed to learn and thrive. Communities across the nation are witnessing the erosion of basic dignity as homelessness spreads from city centers into suburbs and rural areas. The effects of homelessness extend beyond the loss of physical shelter. People experiencing homelessness face higher rates of illness, exposure to violence, and limited access to essential services. The constant stress of survival makes long-term recovery even harder, creating a cycle that is difficult to break without systemic change. Public spaces once meant for recreation now symbolize despair, as growing encampments highlight the depth of inequality. For millions, the risk of homelessness feels just one missed paycheck away, fueling widespread anxiety and instability. This visible crisis serves as a stark reminder of why so many describe life in the U.S. as increasingly unlivable, with the very idea of security crumbling before their eyes. Number 5. Climate disasters and extreme weather. Across the United States, climate disasters are transforming once safe communities into places of fear and instability. In recent years, devastating wildfires have consumed towns in the West, hurricanes have battered the Gulf and Atlantic coasts, and unprecedented flooding has uprooted families in the Midwest. Scientists warn that these events are becoming more frequent and severe, creating environments where rebuilding becomes nearly impossible before the next catastrophe strikes. Families caught in the path of such disasters often lose not only their homes but also their sense of safety, with recovery taking years if recovery is possible at all. The financial toll is equally staggering. Insurance premiums in disaster-prone regions are skyrocketing, with some providers withdrawing entirely, leaving homeowners without coverage. Those who remain are forced to pay unaffordable rates just to maintain basic protection. Meanwhile, displaced families face skyrocketing housing costs in safer areas, further fueling economic stress. The cycle leaves many feeling trapped, stay and risk losing everything, or leave and start over with nothing. In both cases, survival comes at a devastating price. Entire communities are hollowed out as residents flee, reshaping the nation's demographic and economic landscape. Beyond the financial losses, the human toll is profound. Constant exposure to extreme heat, toxic smoke from fires or contaminated floodwaters erodes both physical and mental health. Children grow up with disrupted schooling, while parents wrestle with the trauma of starting over again and again. Studies show rising rates of anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress among disaster survivors, underscoring that the damage is not only physical but deeply emotional. For millions, climate change is no longer an abstract issue debated in politics. It is a daily battle for stability. This relentless wave of disasters has rendered many regions increasingly unlivable, proving that environmental breakdown is one of the most urgent reasons survival in the U.S. feels out of reach. Number 4. Student debt burden. The crushing weight of student debt has reshaped the lives of millions of Americans, turning what was once considered a pathway to success into a long-term financial trap. Today, outstanding student loans exceed $1.7 trillion, leaving graduates saddled with obligations that follow them for decades. Instead of stepping confidently into adulthood, many find themselves delaying major life milestones such as buying a home, starting a family, or even pursuing a career aligned with their passions. For countless individuals, the dream of upward mobility is overshadowed by the reality of monthly payments that consume a significant share of their income. The impact extends far beyond individual borrowers. Families are being reshaped as parents co-sign loans or sacrifice their own retirement savings to help children manage tuition costs. The strain has also widened economic inequality, with low-income students taking on the heaviest burdens yet earning less after graduation compared to peers with family financial support. This cycle ensures that poverty and financial stress often persist across generations. Even policies offering loan forgiveness have been inconsistent and slow to roll out, leaving borrowers uncertain and frustrated about whether meaningful relief will ever come. The psychological toll of this debt is profound. Graduates speak of feeling trapped, as if their financial futures are mortgaged before they even begin. Anxiety, depression, and feelings of hopelessness are common among borrowers, many of whom feel betrayed by a system that promised opportunity but delivered a lifetime of repayment. The burden of student loans has turned education, once viewed as the ultimate investment, into a source of despair for millions. This reality underscores why so many Americans see life as increasingly unlivable, with financial obligations crushing their ability to build stable, fulfilling lives in the very country that encouraged them to chase the dream of higher education. Number 3. Healthcare crisis. For many Americans, Access to healthcare has become a defining line between security and financial ruin. The United States spends more on medical care than any other developed nation, yet millions remain uninsured or underinsured. A single trip to the emergency room can generate bills equal to months of wages, while routine medications cost several times more than in other countries. Families are often forced into impossible choices: pay the rent or pay for treatment, buy groceries or fill prescriptions. The weight of medical debt is staggering, with studies showing it to be one of the leading causes of bankruptcy nationwide. This crisis is not limited to the uninsured. Even those with health insurance face crippling deductibles, hidden fees, and rising premiums that eat into already stretched paychecks. For people managing chronic illnesses, the constant outflow of cash can leave little left for other essentials. Many delay care entirely, hoping problems will resolve on their own, which often leads to far worse and more expensive outcomes. At the same time, shortages of doctors, nurses, and hospital staff create long wait times and declining quality of service, adding another layer of frustration to an already broken system. The ripple effects of unaffordable healthcare extend deeply into daily life. Workers fear losing jobs because employer-provided insurance is their lifeline, while retirees struggle as Medicare fails to cover everything they need. Parents worry about whether they can afford basic pediatric care, and young adults hesitate to seek treatment, fearing the financial aftermath more than the illness itself. This toxic environment fosters stress, inequality, and a sense of hopelessness across entire communities. For millions, the healthcare crisis is more than a policy debate. It is a relentless threat to survival, stripping away peace of mind and proving yet again why life in the U.S. feels increasingly unlivable. Number 2. Stagnant wages versus inflation. The widening gap between wages and inflation is leaving millions of Americans in an economic chokehold. While the cost of essentials like food, fuel, and utilities has risen sharply in recent years, salaries have barely inched forward. Research shows that real purchasing power has actually declined, meaning that even if people are earning slightly more on paper, those dollars buy significantly less. This mismatch is forcing families to stretch every paycheck thinner than ever, turning once manageable expenses into overwhelming financial burdens. The result is a population that works longer hours but struggles to meet even the most basic needs. The reality is especially harsh for workers in low and middle-income jobs, where wage growth has stagnated the most. Many employees are juggling multiple jobs, yet still find themselves unable to cover rent, healthcare, or childcare. Even professional sectors are feeling the strain as inflationary pressures erode the value of salaries that once provided a comfortable standard of living. This fuels rising frustration, as workers realize their hard work no longer translates into security or upward mobility. Generational expectations have shifted dramatically. Where past decades allowed families to save, invest, and thrive, today's workforce is often just fighting to stay afloat. The psychological impact of this imbalance cannot be ignored. Constantly worrying about rising grocery bills, gas prices, or medical costs creates a climate of anxiety that weighs heavily on individuals and families. Long-term plans like saving for retirement, sending children to college, or buying a home are often abandoned, replaced by the urgent need to survive day to day. Economists warn that unless wage growth begins to outpace inflation, the cycle of financial instability will deepen, pushing millions into further debt and despair. The struggle between stagnant incomes and runaway prices underscores why many Americans now describe life in the U.S. as increasingly unlivable, a harsh reality where even full-time work no longer guarantees survival. Number 1. Skyrocketing housing costs. For millions of Americans, the dream of homeownership has turned into a financial nightmare. Over the past decade, housing prices have soared far beyond the reach of middle-class families, while rental rates continue climbing at record speed. Studies reveal that in many metropolitan areas, families are spending more than 50% of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. This imbalance leaves little for essentials like groceries, transportation, or healthcare, forcing countless households into a cycle of perpetual struggle. The promise of affordable shelter, once a cornerstone of stability, is slipping further away with each passing year. The weight of this crisis is not evenly distributed. Young adults entering the workforce face extraordinary barriers, as down payments rise faster than savings can accumulate. Single parents and lower-income earners are among the hardest hit, often left choosing between cramped, unsafe conditions or facing the possibility of homelessness. Reports highlight that in some regions, entire neighborhoods are being reshaped by gentrification, where longtime residents are pushed out to make way for luxury development. What used to be a stable foundation for families has become one of the greatest threats to their financial and emotional well-being. The consequences ripple far beyond the front door. Families weighed down by housing expenses are forced to sacrifice on education, nutrition, and even healthcare, creating a downward spiral that affects future generations. When parents are trapped in this financial bind, children grow up in environments of instability, moving frequently and losing the sense of security a permanent home once offered. Experts warn that without systemic change, millions more will find themselves priced out of communities, unable to build wealth, and stripped of the very security that defines a livable life. This relentless squeeze on housing costs illustrates why so many Americans feel survival itself is at stake, and why the question of affordability has become one of the nation's most pressing crises. The picture we've explored reveals why so many people describe life in the United States as increasingly unlivable. From unaffordable housing and stagnant wages to the crushing weight of student debt and the relentless toll of climate disasters, each challenge places enormous strain on families. Add to that the widespread homelessness crisis, shortages of essential teachers and healthcare workers, the growing fear of crime, and the escalating mental health emergency, and it becomes clear that survival has become more difficult than ever. These struggles are not isolated. They are interconnected, compounding one another and eroding stability on every level. At the same time, mounting government debt and shifting policies create further uncertainty, making it nearly impossible for families to plan or feel secure about the future. What was once taken for granted, affordable homes, safe neighborhoods, quality education, and accessible healthcare, has become increasingly out of reach. Millions of Americans are left asking the same question: if the basics of life are slipping away now, what will the next decade bring? This is the harsh reality many face each day, and it explains why more and more people feel that survival in the U.S. is becoming unsustainable. These 10 reasons are not just statistics or headlines. They are the lived experiences of neighbors, friends, and families across the country. Recognizing them is the first step toward demanding change and rebuilding the promise of a society where security, dignity, and opportunity are not luxuries but essentials. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't miss our previous video for more insights into today's biggest challenges. And if you value the effort we put into creating these videos, please support us with a quick subscribe. It's just one click, but it means everything to us.